Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to really dig into the stories and the details that, well, they shape your life, often more than you realize at first. And sometimes, something that seems like just local news. It lands right on your doorstep, affecting your budget, your daily routine. Today, we're focusing on exactly that kind of situation. It's unfolding right now, June 24th, 2025, in St. Johns County, Florida. We're going to take a deep dive into a pretty significant proposed increase in trash pickup rates. It's a big deal. Our mission today: unpack the history behind this, look at the numbers, understand why it's happening now, and explore what it really means for you if you live in the county. So let's get right to it. What exactly is being proposed? Right now, the annual rate for trash pickup in St. Johns County is $254. But the proposal, the big jump, they're looking at raising it to $334 starting in 2026.
That's an $80 increase right off the bat.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. The plan is for it to go up again to $394 in 2027. And the long-term projection, hitting $454 a year by 2030.
So over 5 years, that's a $200 increase per household.
$200 more per year.
Yeah, and it's really crucial to understand this isn't just, pocket change. It's not a minor adjustment. For residents, that's a genuinely substantial hike, especially when you think about, well, everything else costing more these days.
Absolutely.
Just imagine, what does an extra $80, then $140, eventually $200 a year mean for your family budget? I mean, it adds up. It can definitely squeeze discretionary spending, maybe even impact essentials for some families.
And there's a key date people need to know, right?
Yes, definitely. There's an upcoming public hearing scheduled for August 5th, 2025. That's the official opportunity for residents to go and voice their opinions, their concerns directly to the commissioners. It's going to be a really important meeting for the community to watch.
Okay, so that's the proposal on the table now. But the big question is, how did we even get to this point? Why such a steep increase? To really get it, you have to rewind the clock a bit back to August 2024 and what many residents probably remember as the FCC debacle. Right. So St. Johns County, back in December 2023, awarded this big 7-year contract to a company called FCC Environmental Services. We're talking $28.2 million just for the first year. And a key detail here, their bid was apparently millions less than the next highest bidder.
It's often a selling point initially.
It is. And this was a huge shift because, believe it or not, the county hadn't changed its main trash hauler in 20 years.
20 years with the same provider. Wow.
Yeah. So FCC starts service on August 1st, 2024, and almost instantly, chaos. The transition was, well, the reports called it disastrous almost immediately.
Oh, it really was. And disastrous might be an understatement for what residents experienced. This wasn't just a few hiccups here and there. It was a systemic failure right from day one. Think about this. Within the very first week, just 7 days, county inspectors documented over 5,000 missed trash collections.
5,000 in a week.
5,000, and that was just the documented ones. The problem snowballed incredibly fast. In that first month alone, the county's call center fielded more than 7,000 calls from frustrated residents.
Wow.
And on top of that, another 3,000 complaints came flooding in through the county's mobile app. So 10,000 points of contact in a month.
Just overwhelming.
Totally. And the issues were all over the map. Trash just left sitting on curbs for days, sometimes weeks, bins not emptied at all. Then you had weird stuff, like incorrect pickups.
You mentioned finding your neighbor's bin in your street.
Exactly. People reported garbage cans being left randomly, sometimes blocking driveways or in the middle of the street. Yard waste pickup, forget about it. Some areas went weeks without it. And in Florida, in August. Oh, the smell must have been awful.
Unbearable. It quickly became more than just an inconvenience. It created genuine public health and safety concerns. We're talking pests, rodents, potentially hazardous conditions. It got so bad, the county had to pull its own staff guys from the Road and Bridge Department, who normally fix roads, just to help pick up the trash. So they were essentially running an emergency backup service themselves.
Pretty much. The county staff logged something like 2,200 hours doing emergency service inspections, 13,000 inspections in total, and the county made it clear they were going to bill FCC for every penny of that effort.
And given that level of failure, the county's reaction was decisive. August 20th, 2024, FCC had been on the job less than 3 weeks, and the Board of County Commissioners called an emergency meeting.
They did. And this is where you see just how serious the situation had become. The board didn't just issue warnings, they unanimously declared a local state of emergency. Their reasoning: FCC's failures constituted a, quote, serious threat to public health and safety.
Strong language.
Very. And they immediately followed that up with a vote to terminate the contract with FCC. Less than 3 weeks in.
That's incredibly fast for a government contract termination.
It is. County Administrator Joy Andrews spoke very directly about it at the time. She said, and I'm quoting here, "The county has heard from our community about their disappointment and frustrations with FCC." She continued, "Today, our leadership took bold, aggressive steps to clean up this mess. A new journey begins to regain the confidence of our community when it comes to reassuring them that their trash will be picked up when it should be picked up and they will receive the quality customer service they deserve."
So, acknowledging the breakdown and promising to fix it, what did FCC say?
Well, FCC CEO Dan Brazil did issue a public apology, and their vice president, Charles Merkley, offered a couple of reasons. He cited, quote, "Our technology failed," and also mentioned the unexpected addition of 2,700 new customers just a week before they were supposed to take over.
Technology failure and unexpected growth.
That was their explanation. Meanwhile, the county scrambled. They immediately announced plans to find supplemental service providers and use the emergency declaration to speed up the process for getting new bids, shortening the RFP deadlines.
Okay, so that paints a very clear picture of the chaos last year. But it still begs the question. That was August 2024. We're now in June 2025. Why is that crisis leading to this proposed rate hike now? What's the direct financial link the county's making?
Right, that's the connection we need to draw. According to the Public Works Director, Greg Caldwell, these proposed rate increases are, in his words, necessary to get these solid waste enterprises back into good standing. And crucially, he added, they need to start to pay back the general fund for those 2 years of support.
The general fund. So money meant for other things had to cover the trash shortfall.
Exactly. Think of the general fund as the county's main pot of money, largely funded by property taxes, that pays for everything else. Roads, parks, libraries, public safety, you name it. During the FCC crisis and its immediate aftermath, the solid waste division basically ran out of money or needed significant subsidy. So the general fund had to step in and prop it up.
For 2 years, he said.
That's what was indicated. So these new higher rates aren't just about covering current costs. They're also about replenishing that general fund money that was diverted to keep trash collection going during and after the emergency.
So it's like paying back an internal loan.
In a way, yes. Commissioner Ann Taylor also weighed in, offering a slightly broader view. She said, basically, costs are going up. Simple as that. But she added, what we want to do here in St. Johns County is continue to provide excellent service, especially when it comes to garbage. That's very important to our residents.
So part payback, part covering rising costs, part ensuring future service quality.
Right. And digging into this, there's a deeper insight here, I think. The whole FCC episode, it really exposed the hidden costs, the true cost of prioritizing the lowest bid above perhaps other factors like proven capacity or track record, especially for such an essential service.
The you get what you pay for argument, essentially.
Perhaps. But, maybe more accurately, the cost of fixing a major failure can far outweigh any initial savings from a low bid. This rate hike isn't just about fuel and labor. It's partially about recouping the significant financial and, frankly, public trust cost of that whole debacle.
And speaking of those rising costs Commissioner Taylor mentioned, this isn't just a St. Johns County problem, is it? These pressures are being felt everywhere in the waste industry. Is there anything counties like St. Johns can even do about these broader trends, or are they just kind of stuck passing the costs along?
That's a really good point, and it touches on the bigger economic picture. Waste management is surprisingly very sensitive to broader economic shifts. And yes, these pressures are industry-wide. There are several big factors driving costs up, things individual counties have limited control over. First, and maybe most obviously, fuel costs.
Those big trucks guzzle fuel.
Absolutely. Collection routes are long, the trucks are heavy. Every time diesel prices spike or even just stay high, it hits their operating budget hard. Second, labor costs. This is huge. There's been significant wage inflation across many sectors, and finding and keeping qualified workers, especially drivers with the necessary commercial licenses, CDLs, is really competitive.
Right, it's a tough job.
It is. So waste companies have to pay more to attract and retain reliable staff. Third, disposal costs. The fees landfills charge to accept waste, called tipping fees, are going up. This is partly due to general inflation, but also because environmental regulations are getting stricter, making landfill operation and maintenance more expensive.
Okay, fuel, labor, disposal.
Yeah.
What else?
Fourth, equipment and maintenance. Those specialized garbage trucks. They're incredibly expensive machines. Buying new ones, maintaining the existing fleet, repairing them, all those costs have risen significantly, just like cars and everything else. And finally, regulatory compliance. There are constantly evolving environmental rules, safety standards, training requirements. Companies have to invest more in training, technology, and procedures just to stay compliant.
So when you list it all out like that.
Yeah, it paints a picture. So to your question, can counties push back? Well, they can try to negotiate the best possible contracts, optimize collection routes for fuel efficiency, maybe invest in waste reduction or recycling programs to lower landfill volumes over time.
But they can't control the price of diesel or national wage trends.
Exactly. They face these macroeconomic headwinds just like any business. They can try to absorb some minor fluctuations, maybe delay passing costs on for a short time, but eventually, to maintain the service level residents expect, those costs have to be reflected in the rates.
Okay, so given those external pressures and the internal need to recover from the FCC mess, let's talk comparisons. How do these proposed St. John's rates the $334 for 2026, heading towards $454 by 2030, actually compared to other places in Florida? Public Works Director Caldwell said St. John's would be in the middle of the pack. Is that accurate? Because, like we said, middle can still feel high when it's your bill.
It's a really important comparison for context. Let's look at a few examples. Up north, in Jacksonville, Duval County, they recently went through their own rate adjustments. They actually hadn't raised their garbage fee since 2010.
Wow, over a decade.
Yeah, so they had a lot of catching up to do. Their rates are now projected to hit $384 annually by 2027.
So higher than St. John's proposed $334 for 2026.
Correct. Jacksonville's total increase was massive, 153% higher than their old rate. It shows what happens when adjustments are deferred for too long. Perhaps for political reasons, the eventual correction is much more painful.
Okay, what about somewhere else?
Let's look southwest to Lee County. Their current rates for this fiscal year, FY 2025, are already somewhere in the range of $312 to $340 per year, depending on the specific service area.
So St. John's proposed $334 for next year fits right within Lee County's current range.
Pretty much, yeah. It suggests that $334 isn't wildly out of line with what similar counties are already charging. So Caldwell's statement about being in the middle of the pack, it seems reasonably accurate based on these comparisons. He mentioned St. John's would likely be higher than, say, Putnam County, which is generally less developed, but roughly on par with nearby San Augustine Beach. And importantly, about $75 less than places like Palm Coast and Flagler County. Though it's fair to note those areas often have twice-a-week trash pickup, which naturally costs more. St. John's is typically once a week.
Okay, so the context helps. It's a big jump for St. John's residents specifically, but maybe not an outlier regionally.
That seems to be the case. It aligns with or is even below what some comparable Florida communities are already paying for similar services.
Right. Now let's bring it right down to the individual level. What does this actually mean month to month for you, the resident paying the bill, and what are people actually saying about this on the ground?
Okay, let's break down the monthly impact. That proposed $80 annual increase for 2026 works out to an extra $6.66 per month.
Okay, like a fancy coffee.
Roughly. Then, when it potentially goes up to $394 in 2027, that's an increase of $140 from today's rate, which is about $11.66 extra per month compared to now.
Getting more noticeable.
Definitely. And if it reaches the projected $454 by 2030, that total $200 annual increase means you'd be paying an extra $16.66 each month compared to what you pay today.
$16 a month adds up over a year.
It certainly does, and residents are definitely talking about it. We heard some voices collected by local news outlets like Action Newsjacks. One longtime resident, Rajan Redmond, had some strong feelings. She said, quote, "I usually wait 2 or 3 weeks before I put it out, and they want to charge me more."
Implying she doesn't feel she gets value even now.
Right. She added, "Bills are high enough without having to pay more, and also, it's just so ridiculous. I mean, I hardly even put my trash out every week." So, questioning the value proposition for low-volume users. Another resident, Marcus Bailey, was more blunt, simply saying, "That's just preposterous what they got going on."
Straight to the point.
And Arden Pelt focused on the financial strain, saying, "It would make things harder, more difficult, especially for people who don't have a lot of money to throw around."
Highlighting the impact on affordability.
Exactly. But it wasn't universally negative, or at least some reactions were more measured. Sunil Kandikatla acknowledged definitely a big hike, but also said he isn't too concerned but doesn't love the idea of paying more. Kind of a resigned acceptance, maybe? And there's another angle here, too, how this fee structure impacts different kinds of property owners.
How so?
Well, this proposed rate, like the current one, is a flat fee applied to all residential properties. And residential properties includes vacant lots zoned for residential use.
Ah, so even if there's no house, no one living there, no trash being generated, you still pay the fee.
That's typically how these solid waste assessments work, yes. So, if you own multiple properties, maybe some rental units, maybe a piece of land you plan to build on later, maybe a vacation home that's empty much of the year, this fee gets multiplied.
Ouch. So an investor or someone holding onto land could see their carrying costs jump significantly from this one fee increase across all their properties.
Precisely. It's not just homeowners living in their primary residence who are affected. It stacks up for anyone owning multiple residential parcels.
That really underscores the potential hardship. Which brings up a critical question. Are there any protections? Any safety nets for households that might genuinely struggle to afford this increase, especially those on fixed incomes or lower wages?
Thankfully, yes. The county does seem aware of this potential burden and has a program in place. St. Johns County offers a low-income exemption for the solid waste assessment.
Okay, how does that work?
Households whose total income falls within 150% of the federal poverty level may qualify. For context, using the 2024 guidelines, that threshold was around $46,800 for a family of 4. If a household qualifies, they can apply to continue paying the current rate, which is $254 per year, instead of the increased rate.
So that could shield the most financially vulnerable residents from the hike.
It could, yes. It's a really vital protection. However, the effectiveness of any exemption program like this really depends on two things. Public awareness, people have to know it exists, and accessibility, the application process needs to be straightforward and not overly burdensome.
Right. The county needs to make sure people who are eligible can actually access that relief easily.
Absolutely. That outreach and ease of access are key to making the safeguard meaningful.
So looking ahead, we mentioned that August 5th public hearing. That feels like more than just a procedural step this time around. It seems like a really pivotal moment.
Oh, I think it absolutely is. It's going to be a major test, really. A test of public sentiment. For sure, how much frustration remains from the FCC debacle, how residents perceive the justification for the hike, but it's also a test for the county. Can they effectively communicate why these increases are necessary? Can they convince residents that the money will lead to better, more reliable service this time? Can they gain buy-in after what happened?
Regaining trust seems central here.
Completely. If we connect this back to the bigger picture, the county says its goal is stable, sustainable funding for waste management. They don't want a repeat of the crisis. But the FCC mess itself serves as a huge, costly lesson. It really drove home the risks involved in awarding contracts based primarily on the lowest price without maybe enough weight given to operational readiness, capacity, and, frankly, the contractor's track record.
That lowest bid approach really backfired.
Spectacularly so in this case. It showed that sometimes the cheapest option up front ends up being the most expensive in the long run once you factor in the cost of failure, emergency services, and reputational damage.
It seems like the county is now trying to position this rate hike as part of learning from that mistake, part of building a more resilient system.
That appears to be the narrative, yes. And the situation really underscores the importance of several key governance principles. One is proactive rate management, ideally. Rates should be adjusted incrementally over time to keep pace with costs, rather than huge jumps after years of stagnation or a crisis.
Avoiding that sticker shock we saw with Jacksonville's 153% increase.
Exactly. Another principle is robust contractor oversight, not just signing a contract, but actively monitoring performance from day one, having clear metrics and holding contractors accountable. And of course, transparent public engagement. Explaining the why behind decisions, especially unpopular ones like rate hikes, is crucial for building understanding, even if not always agreement.
So the county's challenge now is not just setting a new rate, but rebuilding that confidence.
Precisely. As Administrator Andrews stated last year, it's about regaining community confidence. That means demonstrating consistent, reliable service moving forward. It probably also involves communicating clearly how this new revenue will directly translate into service improvements or stability, ensuring those performance metrics for the next contractor are tough and enforced, making sure that low-income exemption really works for people, and maybe even building in review points for these phased increases to ensure they remain justified.
It's about proving things will be different this time.
Yes. Preventing a repeat of the 2024 disaster has to be priority number one, alongside ensuring fiscal stability for the service.
All right. So as we wrap up this deep dive into St. Johns County's trash rates, and you, the listener, maybe reflect on your own situation, here's something to think about. We often take essential services like trash pickup for granted until they go wrong. Given the very real costs, fuel, labor, equipment, disposal, the cost of fixing failures, and the absolute necessity of these services for public health and, well, modern life. What is the true cost of convenience and reliability in our communities? And maybe more importantly, how do we strike the right balance? How do we ensure affordability for residents while also demanding and funding services that are consistently excellent and making sure the hard-learned lessons from past failures actually stick? It's a tough balancing act for any community.